Namaste. I'm Lori Templeman from Lincoln City Parks and Recreation. Welcome to 3D Yoga. This gentle practice combines classic yoga postures where we focus on moving in multiple directions, front to back, side to side, rotating left and rotating right. You will need a yoga mat and a comfortable space to move around. And if you have a yoga block, this may help bring the floor a little closer to our hands for some of the postures. As well as a blanket, we can use it to place it underneath our head or underneath our hips for a little more comfort. Let's begin in a comfortable reclining position. Let's begin getting as comfortable as possible. If we're lying down, we can have our legs out long, can have our feet on the floor, or any other position that feels most inviting and comfortable. If seated is preferred, sinking our hips, lining up our spine, and focusing on our posture. First, let's just allow our body to relax into the mat, closing our eyes, and taking in a long, slow breath in, and a cleansing exhale. Scanning our body from the crown of our head to the tips of our toes. Noticing how we're feeling today, inside and out. Softening tension that we're carrying, and acknowledging areas asking for some attention. The tight spots, areas of tension, any injuries that we're taking care of. We'll be sure to listen to our body and make any necessary adjustments for our safety and comfort. As we sink down heavy into the mat, taking a moment to focus on anything passing through our mind. Our work, our activities, an upcoming event, challenges we're working through, maybe even a blessing we've recently received. This is where we recognize what's there, what may pose a distraction, gathering everything together into our mind's eye, and let's place everything outside the door for this block of time. Instead, let's focus on an intention for this practice. Our intention is formed any way we like. Maybe it's a word or phrase that resonates today. There may be a dedication we'd like to send out for someone else. Or simply acknowledging why we're here on our mat today. With our body relaxed and our intention set, beginning to focus on our yoga breathing. Our breath can be felt with one hand on our belly, one hand on our chest, closing our mouth and starting to breathe slowly and deeply through our nose. We'll take a full expanding inhale into our belly. It feels like a balloon, rising up into our chest, expanding our lungs, and filling up the back of our throat. When we exhale, everything empties from the throat down. Our breath moving like an ocean wave, rolling out and in. And with our mouth closed, as we soften the back of our throat, we'll also experience the oceanic ujjayi sound, further relaxing our body and mind. Taking in a few more yoga breaths in preparation. As we settle into a reclining position, starting off with a full body stretch, reaching out as long as we can from fingertips to feet. Energy reaching both directions, starting to wiggle our fingers and toes, circling our wrists and ankles. Then moving as we feel the need to move, checking in with our arms and legs. Noticing how our joints are feeling. Bringing both knees in toward our chest, rocking side to side. Let's check in with our spine, loosen our hips a little bit. Flowing back to center, placing our feet on the floor with our ankles and knees together, our spine and neck are lengthened. Reaching both hands straight up toward the ceiling and out to our side like we're forming a letter T. Starting to wiper our legs from side to side. Inhaling to the side, exhaling through the center. Using the strength in our obliques to raise our legs back toward the middle. With our knees back in center, walking our feet hip distance apart, bringing our arms down by our side for bridge pose. Our feet plant into the earth, lifting our hips up slowly. Exhaling back down. And again. Energizing our legs, opening up the front of our hips. Adding on our three-dimensional movement as we lift our hips up, drawing a circle with our tailbone out to the right, around the top, to the left, and down. Finding a range of motion that's comfortable. There will be some weight shift across our legs. And then back the other direction, out to our left side first, around and down. Our hips settle to the mat, reaching out long again. Then our knees come in, rolling to one side. Rising up into a comfortable seated pose. Maybe bringing our blanket in under our hips if we'd like a little extra cushion. With our legs either extending out long in front or letting our legs cross. Focusing on our posture, the crown of our head lifting up toward the ceiling, our shoulders sliding down, and our chin pulling back slightly, lining up our ears and our shoulders. With an inhale, reaching up, lengthening, exhaling down easy. Here's an opportunity to deepen our breath. Our hands resting to our knees. We're free to close our eyes if comfortable while our upper body circles around, loosening up. And back the other direction. Realigning tall and center as our fingertips reach up toward the sky, joining. One hand comes to the floor next to our hip, our other arm reaching up and adding a slight bend. Changing sides. We're lifting through our rib cage and fingertips while rooting and anchoring through our hip. Returning to center, with our ankles crossed, our knees can rise a bit, grabbing onto our shins for support, and moving into a seated cat and cow. Our tailbone tucks under, rounding our spine back like a letter C, with our chin tucking in toward our chest. Then our tailbone reaches back, lifting up, opening our heart toward the sky, and lifting our chin. Starting again. This movement rises from our tailbone up to the crown of our head every time. Back to neutral. We've gone side to side and forward and back. Let's add rotation. With our fingertips joining at the top, turning to one side, bringing a hand to our knee, the other to the floor behind our hip, lifting up as tall as we can, and pressing into our hands to help us rotate the last little bit. Our inhales allow us to rise as tall as we can be. Our exhales, we're pressing into the earth and into our leg to help get the full stretch. Flowing through center, changing sides. As the crown of our head rises tall, our shoulders are dropping and sinking away from our ears. Meeting in center. For the next series, I'm going to turn sideways. It's a little easier to view from this angle. Moving through an active seated forward fold. With our hands out in front, lifting through our chest and walking forward slowly, about 70% of the way. Then a slow walk back up, restacking our posture. Let's do that again, perhaps a little further. The third time, moving through our comfortable range of motion and staying there. Our tailbone roots down, our rib cage reaches forward, and our head drops. And we can nod our head yes and shake it no to loosen up tension. That was our front to back. Let's move this side to side by walking our hands over toward the edge or outer part of our mat, and then to the other side. Just walking to the comfortable end range. From center, as we add rotation, one hand plants into the mat while our other hand sweeps up and around. And exhaling down, changing sides. We're bringing our rib cage around, lifting toward the sky while our other hand presses into the earth. Sinking into forward fold, which might be a little deeper than before. Walking our hands back in, rising tall, and let's transition up onto our hands and knees or all fours. Now that we're on all fours, let's get a good alignment set up. Our fingers can spread wide like two starfish, or we can make two fists with our palms facing in. Also, if needed, we can always lower onto our forearms if we need to keep our hands unloaded. Let's move front to back with our cat and cow. Same as in seated, our tailbone lifts up, lifting up through our rib cage and in the crown of our head. Then our tailbone turns down, rounding our spine up, tucking our chin in toward our chest. We have a downward push into the earth with our elbows extended but not locked. The next time we're in cat pose, holding the position, rounding our back up, opening our shoulder blades toward the sky, and let's add a side-to-side tail wag. Our right foot lifting up, that will serve as our tail, and we'll pivot our foot over to the left, turn and look over our shoulder and glance at our foot, and then realigning through the middle, bringing our toes out to the right, looking over our right shoulder, and continuing from side to side. Our hips sway from side to side, but we want to maintain our rounded cat pose, which will bring the stretch a little further down the side of our hip. Let's realign in the center, rounding up into cat, and our left foot takes a turn. Realigning in center, our spine comes to neutral, and let's thread the needle. This is our rotation. Pushing down into our left hand, reaching our right arm up, and threading and reaching through our other arm and leg. As we did in seated, we're bringing our rib cage around, threading through until we feel a gentle stretch in the back of our shoulder, squaring our rib cage with the floor. Realigning in the center, our left arm taking over. Once we're back in center, moving from all fours into a low lunge. Stepping or helping our right foot forward, and we can always slide our blanket or cushion underneath our left knee if we'd like a little more support. And let's line up our knee and ankle with each other, with our hands on the floor, or we can always put a block or two or another object to bring the reach a little closer. Sinking down into our hips, relaxing our shoulders, neck, and head. Our tailbone draws a circle again, starting small. And we're going to feel this stretch moving into several different angles. And a few circles in the other direction. As we realign, starting off by extending our knee, hinging back, and then hinging forward, knee over ankle. We want to go far enough back to our toes stay on the mat, and that means our knee is likely still bent. We're just going to the comfortable edge before releasing. This is version number 1. If our balance permits, when our knee comes forward, hinging up, sweeping overhead, exhaling our hands down and hinging back. We can also do this with our hands on our thigh, a little easier for balance that way. Realigning here, let's put one hand, our left hand, on the floor or block, and our right hand comes to our thigh. As we push down into our hands, bring our right rib cage around into a twist, and our top hand reaching up toward the ceiling. Another variation is to place our hands together, bring our elbow to the outside of our thigh, use it as a little leverage to rotate into another twist. Rotating to center. Let's help our foot back, and we'll go directly to the other side, stepping or helping our left leg forward. Let's settle into our low lunge, sinking our hips, and starting to draw the circle with our tailbone. Let's be very mindful and deliberate here, as this can be a very tight area we're stretching. Back the other direction. From center, starting our salutation. Hinging back, our front knee extending. Hinging forward, knee over ankle. Alternating between a left hamstring stretch and our right hip flexors. Same options apply. Realigning, setting up for our twist. Our right hand on the floor of the block, inside our left foot, with our left hand on our thigh, rotating around, maybe reaching up, or lifting up, hands together, rotating elbow to thigh. Either version will do. Sweeping down, helping our foot back onto all fours. From here, we can remove our blanket off to the side as well as our block and come back into a brief child's pose. Our knees can widen here, sinking our hips back, our forehead reaching toward the floor. And if child's pose is preferred, we can spend some extra breaths here. Or lifting up into downward facing dog, our toes curling under, lifting our hips up. As we push forward, sinking our hips back, bending our knees as needed, so we have a long, strong spine. Maybe our heels sinking down one at a time. And let's make our way to standing. One foot comes forward at a time. Our knees bending a lot, hinging in our hips, sweeping overhead. And let's settle into mountain pose. Now that we're in mountain pose, let's create our foundation. Starting at the soles of our feet, we can lift and spread our toes, start to feel the mat beneath us. Move our weight around and find our center balance. Our knees and ankles are soft and supple. Our pelvis moves into a gentle tilt with the top rib moving forward, tilting back and finding a spot that feels neutral and level. Let's set our shoulders up, back, and down, lengthening our neck and trying our chin tuck as we did before. Adding our breath with a long reach up, let's gather up some energy and exhale down easy. Making these our deepest breaths so far. On an exhale, sitting into our chair pose, as if there's a seat behind us. We reach back into our seat and rise back up to standing. Keeping our chest lifted, setting our gaze onto a spot in the distance, and our hands can stay together. They can rest on our thighs as we do this, or adding the arm flow, sweeping our hands up and over, and then down and forward. Let our hands come down to our side. One hand will rest on the side of our thigh while our other arm reaching up. Let's lengthen toward the ceiling and get as long as we can before adding a lift to our rib cage and a slight bend, holding here. The sole of our foot is pushing into the earth and we're reaching and lengthening away from the anchor point. Changing sides. From center, we've gone front to back and lateral. Let's add some rotation. Our stance can open to shoulder distance with soft knees, starting to rotate from our waist left to right, keeping our pelvis facing forward. Exhaling into every turn, inhaling as we pass through center. Our hands can stay at rest or flowing up through the middle, and one hand comes to the front, one hand comes to the back of our hip when we turn. From center, our stance opening up into a wide straddle with our toes turned out. A couple practice squats will help us check that our knees and ankles are in a good alignment. And our hands can always stay on our hips, or we can reach up and out like a star, fingers spreading wide for our moonflowers. As we drop straight down, our elbows pull in and back, then rising and reaching toward the sky. Adding a hip hinge halfway down, sweeping toward the earth with a lifted chest, and then hinging up, sweeping overhead. The key here is to keep a lifted heart and a neutral spine. We want to avoid rounding over, just sinking into our pelvis. Our hands come down to our heart center. And as we lower into the squat, one hand is placed against our inner thigh, pressing gently into it, while our other hand reaches up toward the sky. Back to center, lowering it again. Our ribcage spiraling around here. And we can still follow our top arm with our eyes. From center, let's turn our toes so they're forward and parallel to each other. If you'd like to grab a block, we can place it and put it in the middle of our feet, slightly forward, sweeping our hands overhead and hinging forward into straddle fold. Let's get rooted through our feet, lifting our tailbone as if we're suspending from it, letting our head drop heavy. Then we can nod our head yes and shake it no, loosen our shoulders a bit. And let's move through the three planes again. Cat and cow as we push down into our hands, lifting our chest and our tailbone, then rounding our back up. Just moving through whatever range of motion is available. It's typically less from this position. And then side to side, we can walk our hands to one side and then the other. We'd like to involve our lower body a little more. Lean side to side. This will lengthen our inner thighs. And remember to move only through your comfortable range. From center, once our balance is equal, lifting through our chest so our spine is parallel with the floor. One hand anchors into the floor or the block, and our other hand comes to our low back with our palm to our back. The downward push will bring our ribcage around, and our hand can stay at rest or reach up with our palm facing out to the side. We want our thumb pointing forward in the same direction as our head. Sweeping down, setting up for our other side, keeping our spine long. Hand to our hip or reaching up. It's the downward root or push through our hand that allows our ribcage to rotate and our arm to rise. Sweeping down, softening our knees, hinging back up in a reverse swan dive, circling our hands to our heart, and we'll go directly into Warrior Two by pivoting our right foot in toward our midline and our left toes pivot toward the short side of our mat. We stay open to the side by bending our front knee into a lunge and reaching our hands out above each foot, parallel to the floor, and then back to the start. Let's practice this for a few breaths as we focus on our balance, our alignment, and make any necessary adjustments. Sinking our hips down from our Warrior Two foundation, moving from side angle to reverse warrior. For side angle, bringing our forearm to our thigh, sweeping up and over. Our ribcage comes around again. Then our hand comes to our hip and back, reaching up in front with our palm facing in. Stability in our lower body while our upper body is mobile. Meeting in Warrior Two, making two soft fists, drawing our right hand around as the archer, pulling back our bow from our arrow. We can rotate our ribcage, look behind, and sweep around, adding some rotation to this pose, some upper body mobility. A careful release of our hands, turning our toes so they're forward again. Let's take a few deep breaths, a brief transition. This time our left toes turning in, our right toes to the front. Practicing our lunge once we're stable. Ankle, knee, and hand aligned in the front. Ears, shoulders, and hips are stacked down the middle. And our hand and foot aligned in back. Sinking into warrior two, preparing for side angle and reverse warrior. Forearm to thigh, reaching up and over. Rooting our back hand down, rising, lifting our rib cage in front. Letting our breath take us back and forth. Returning to warrior two for our bow and arrow, our archer, sweeping around, pulling back and releasing. Let's allow our hands to release, pivoting our toes back forward and carefully walking our feet in heel toe until we can step together in mountain pose. Finding our posture, perhaps closing our eyes, and just noticing how we're feeling at this point. Preparing to ease down, our body is warmed up, and perhaps reflecting on the intention we chose at the very beginning. Continuing to enjoy the stillness or letting our hands flow up. When our standing practice is complete, let's make a swan dive to fold by bending our knees, reaching back into our seat, and hinging forward. We may want to grab our block again, bring it underneath our hands, putting a little weight into our hands, softening our knees as needed, and as our tailbone lifts, our head drops. We may want to let gravity do the work, or we can add a weight shift, move and sway any angle or direction that feels comfortable for our body. Then our hands transitioning to the mat, stepping back. If we'd like some time in down dog, maybe a couple breaths there. Eventually lowering down to child's pose. And we can have our arms extended out in front or bring our arms by our side with our palms up, letting our shoulders roll apart. A few deep breaths travel throughout our body, especially into any areas still demanding attention. As we prepare to relax with our hands out in front, rising up to all fours, lowering a hip to the floor to bring our legs around in front. If we'd like our blanket to serve as a pillow, it can move to the top of our mat, or we may wish to cover up our body with the blanket if we're going to be there a while. One leg is out long while other knee hugs in to ease us down. Our knees come back in, rocking side to side. Settling into Savasana, which as we began is whatever's most comfortable. Feet on the floor, Maybe our feet want to join together into a butterfly. Legs out long. Allowing a few breaths to circulate. Sinking into our mat. Our eyes are heavy. And for the next few minutes, settling into stillness for our opportunity to breathe, rejuvenate, and heal. 3 chimes will bring us back. Slowly returning to our deep yoga breath. Our inhales, welcoming in the energy, the benefits, the best of our practice today. Our exhales, cleansing away the excess we no longer need. Ready to fill that space with something new. Taking our time, rolling to one side, pausing there for a moment. And rising back up to our tall, seated posture. recognizing we've taken time from our day to slow down, focus on ourselves for a while, and we'll carry the best of our practice with us as we continue with our day. For our closing breaths, our hands reaching up toward the sky, and our hands showering open. Reaching up again, joining our palms at the top, and as we lower down through the center, taking a moment to pause and acknowledge the clarity in our mind and the warmth in our heart. Thank you for joining me today. May you be happy, safe, and well. Namaste.